I said I wasn't going to do a third part. I am so sorry. I apologize for this. I even turned to part 4. I hope not. I was going to do this in part 2. Forgive me. By the way, if you hear any noise, my window's that way. If you hear any noise coming from the park out there, I apologize. The softball game is getting a little rowdy, so I apologize for any noise you might hear. But I am really apologizing for the subject is getting out of hand. I know it's getting away from me again, and I'm running my mouth, which I shouldn't. But then see, since I'm making this for a future generation, 200 years from now, 500 years from now, you know, the way I look at it is that if you're living in a Star Trek kind of future, then you don't have to work for a living anymore, right? You've solved all economic problems. So what else have you got to do all day long but to sit around and watch ancient videos like this one? I know you're enjoying it, right? Maybe that's too much to hope for, but it's interesting. I think, you know, my contemporaries may be annoyed with me, but I think you there in the future, you find this a little bit interesting, right? So what I still have to discuss, by the way, I just want to mention there's another fear that Jews have, and I want to give a very specific example of scholarly fears in this. But I can't stop thinking about you future generations. You know, remember back in part 1 of this series on fear, in part 1 I said the problem in historical Jesus studies is not what do we know, what can we know about the historical Jewish Jesus, but do you want to know the historical Jewish Jesus? That's really the problem. And I would love to know if you people in the future, did you get over that hurdle? Did you get over that hump? Did you solve that problem? Did you resolve any of these fears? Have you gotten any closer to understanding the historical Jewish Jesus? I would really love to know that. You know what you guys should do, you guys in the future? You should make your own video. You should make a video about how any of this or all of this or any of it was resolved. Did you get over some of these fears? What did you learn about the historical Jewish Jesus? Is this finally a legitimate historical field? And you should make a video about that and send it back in time to us. I guess that's not going to happen, is it? I guess you haven't solved the problem of time travel. But you have no idea how much I wish you could do that, and we could know what you people in the future have resolved about this. So failing that, all I can do is tell the truth, like Hillel might have wished, or Max Probilla, the German Jesuit. I quoted both of them, Hillel and Max Probilla, the German Jesuit writing in the 1930s. I quoted them in the other videos I made about, the 2 videos I made on the importance, why it's so important to prove the innocence of Judas. But you know, I can't help thinking of another quotation, actually. Did you ever see the film 1,000 Acres? If you people in the future haven't seen it, look it up in your computer somewhere. It's based on a novel by Jane Smiley, 1,000 Acres. And I never saw the whole film. A number of years ago, many years ago, I flipped the TV on one day and I got to see like the last 30 minutes or less of this film. It was about these 3 sisters in a legal battle with their father, who's old now, maybe demented. The father is played by Jason Robards. And 2 of the 3 sisters are played by Michelle Pfeiffer and Jessica Lange. So they're in a fight with their father over this land, but a number of things come out about the family, and I think primarily because of one sister, to remember things. The father was quite abusive to them, and I think sexually abusive as well. And a lot of things come out that not everybody in the family is happy to hear. Well, at the very end of the film, one of the sisters is sick and dying in a hospital bed. I think it's the sister played by Michelle Pfeiffer, I'm not sure. And Jessica Lange's sister comes to visit her. So the one who's sick and dying of cancer, she says, you know, I didn't accomplish anything in my life. I didn't build anything. I didn't create anything. I didn't build a new business. I didn't buy more land to make a bigger farm. I didn't write a novel or a poem. I may be embellishing a bit. I don't remember everything she said. But basically she made the point that I didn't build or create anything. I didn't leave anything behind, any trace that would show I was on this earth. I can lay claim, she says, to having done only one thing, only one accomplishment in my life. I saw and I did not flinch from telling. And I've never been able to stop thinking about that. It is as meaningful to me as anything Hillel said or that German Jesuit said. I saw and I did not flinch from telling. You know, no artist or scientist could have a better epitaph than that. That is the best epitaph that any scientist or artist could wish for. I saw and I did not flinch from telling. And that's all my life adds up to. You know, I may not know what you guys in the future think about all this, And maybe I didn't leave anything behind, but I can say that I didn't flinch from telling some of these things. Look, another thing to see here that has to be told is that Jews are also afraid, if we investigate this history, maybe it'll turn out there is some truth to the idea that Judaism, or Judaism is represented by certain particular Jewish leaders, did participate with Rome in the death of Jesus. They had something to do with it. And if that's true, then we have something shameful on our past, something to feel guilty about, because Jesus was a good guy, this Rabbi Joshua from Nazareth. He was a good guy, and if Jewish leaders did this to him, that's something shameful. Well, I'm here to tell Jews, first of all, that it didn't happen that way. Rest assured that Jewish leaders actually tried to save his life. And when I say what is historically probable or not, when I talk about historical probability, I mean what the bulk of the evidence testifies to. The bulk of the evidence certainly does not support that Jewish leaders tried to do him in and worked with Rome to that end. The bulk of the evidence supports the fact that they tried to save his life. But and it's the opposite fear that Christians have. Christians are afraid that maybe the bulk of the evidence will prove that Jewish leaders had nothing to do with his death and tried to save his life. And if that's so, then we have something to feel guilty about, namely this great injustice towards Jews. Well, I would say to both Jews and Christians, whatever the truth of history is, whatever the bulk of the evidence most probably supports, you have nothing to feel ashamed of or guilty about, no matter how it turns out. Because whatever history truly is, most probably is, we can absorb it and digest it and get over it. Real history can be digested. It's false history, the lies, the myths about history that we have difficulty digesting, they can't be digested. We keep spitting it out. It keeps upsetting us. But whatever is historically probable, we can learn to digest and live with. So for Jews or Christians, there's nothing to feel guilty about here. Let's just get to the truth. Now scholars are like anybody else in this field. I mean, like anybody else, whether it's atheists, religious people, historical Jesus scholars do the same thing everybody else does. They bring their a priori convictions to this, and they don't want to see their a priori convictions overturned. They don't want to discover anything about the historical Jewish Jesus. No. What they want to do is impose their ideas on him. They want to keep him locked up in a prison. And fears are very useful to that. Yeah, they tell those lies, as I said in part 2 here, ancient Judaism, the identity of ancient Jews, it revolves around what? Temple rituals and purity concerns? Not so. The identity of ancient Jews revolves around the fight for constitutional government, justice, and peace. And Jesus was a rabbi very much in that order. But look, here's a very particular piece of evidence from the past. 2 wide patterns of evidence, not particular individual piece of evidence, 2 wide patterns establish this. Jesus was a rabbi. How do we know that? Pattern 1, he's called rabbi often enough in all the Gospels. All the Gospels do it. Even John, the most theological of all the Gospels, the one that comes closest to deifying Jesus, even John has no trouble remembering 5, 6, or 7 times he reports Jesus being called rabbi. And I mean the Hebrew term rabbi transliterated into Greek. In addition to that, all the Gospels, any number of times, call him a teacher using the Greek word for teacher. So the Greek word for teacher, or the term rabbi translated into Greek, that's one wide pattern of evidence that Jesus was a rabbi. The other is that all his teachings, all his sayings, all the parables, are all there in rabbinic literature. What better evidence could you have that he was a rabbinic teacher? He's teaching the same things you'll find in rabbinic literature. One of the most interesting parts of his Jewishness here, and I'm talking very fast at the end here to get this done in 10 minutes, he taught about chutzpah, yes. Now, you people in the future, you future generations, you know what I'm talking about. If some of my contemporaries tuned into this, what are they thinking? They're thinking, chutzpah, isn't that a Yiddish word? A Yiddish word from the Middle Ages? No. Chutzpah was adapted and adopted into the Yiddish language, but it's originally an Aramaic word. You'll find it in the Talmud. You'll even find it in the Mishnah, which is mostly in Hebrew, but occasionally has some words, phrases, and sentences in Aramaic. So you'll find chutzpah in the Mishnah also. And Jesus talks a lot about chutzpah. A lot. I mean a lot. And we're never going to know that from scholars. Why? Because they deny that rabbi is a legitimate category to study Jesus in. Now, if you go to my website, Google my name, Leon Zitzer, my name is in the description of this video, you can find my website and an essay there called Rabbi Joshua. You also find my blog spot, my book, True Jew. But in the essay, Rabbi Joshua, I talk about some of this. And scholars say, what? That Jesus, rabbi was a term, a merely respectful term for him. I'm going to continue this just a little bit in part 4, because there's just a couple of things I got to say. I promise part 4 is going to be under 2 or 3 minutes. I'll see you in part 4. They do a bad job about Jesus as rabbi. Amigos y compañeros, see you in the next one.